Vickers.
Thank you, Mr Hanson. It's a pleasure to follow the honourable gentleman from East Lothian, and I think the comments that he's just made about Brexit, which of course is the most contentious issue that we're facing at the moment, highlight the fact that these end-of-term debates, whether they're discussing serious issues such as that, are always done in a good-natured way, and it's always a pleasure to take part in them. Other members, such as my honourable friend from Beckenham, raised a particular issue which I suspect perhaps none of us were aware of, and highlighted a serious issue that could affect any of our constituents, whereas others, as for example my honourable friend from Keighley, focus on many aspects of their constituency. And my honourable friend, who's not in his place at the moment, from Southend, had the temerity to suggest that Southend should have city status, etc., etc., when of course he knows full well that Cleethorpes is the premier resort of the East Coast. And to suggest that the UK representative from Taiwan would have said that Southend it beats Cleethorpes, he wouldn't possibly say that. He's too much of a diplomat. And he also would know that his opposite number in Taipei spent part of their childhood in Cleethorpes. So he would be on dangerous ground if he were to suggest such an outrageous comment. Sporting themes have been touched on, so it would be remiss of me not to mention Grimsby Town FC, who many perhaps wouldn't know actually play in Cleethorpes. Blundell Park, their home ground, where they've played since 1898, is indeed in Cleethorpes. Another anomaly, of course, is that Cleethorpes Town, who play in the Northern Premier League, actually play in Grimsby. But such as the oddities that surround Grimsby and Cleethorpes, where the only recognition that there is a border is when you come to the passport point. But more seriously, perhaps I could raise a number of issues that I particularly wanted to that affect the local area. First of all, I think it was my honourable friend from Harrow who mentioned the role of local authorities, and he, of course, is a very long-serving local authority leader, I think I'm right in saying. I have two local authorities that serve my area, both our unitary councils, North Lincolnshire and North East Lincolnshire. And as an aside, I would hope that some future government will consider imposing unitary authorities across the country, which I think are far more efficient and would actually lead to more resources being made available to provide frontline services. And I recognise the continuing constraints on government budgets, but I'll repeat what I've said on a number of occasions previously. I do think that local authorities do need additional resources, and the cuts that have been made to them, though necessary, have probably gone as far as most authorities can actually manage. It's not just the essential services that those authorities provide, such as adult care, dealing with looked after children, waste collection and so on. It's also those things which are perhaps not absolutely essential, but improve our qualities of life: libraries, parks, open spaces and the like. And the feel-good factor plays a part. If you have a nice environment to live in, the reality is that antisocial behaviour is reduced, and we all actually enjoy the facilities that they provide. North Lincolnshire Council have the advantage of the business rate pilot, which was introduced last year, the 75% deal. Unfortunately, North East Lincolnshire, who applied for that this year, were not given the go-ahead. I've not yet had any feedback as to the reasoning for that, but I would hope, put on record my hopes that in the future that will be rectified. The other thing that particularly affects local economic policy, of course, are the local enterprise partnerships. And both my local authorities are members of both the Humber LEP and also the Greater Lincolnshire LEP. And as a result of the review that's currently taking place, there is a possibility that local councils will only be able to have membership of one LEP. Now, I can understand the logic of that, and it tidies it up from a purely administrative point of view. But I would hope that government will actually focus its attention on perhaps the LEPs that are less successful. In our area, both those LEPs, the Humber one, which focuses particularly on the offshore renewable sector and skills, which are vitally important to our local area, but also the Greater Lincolnshire LEP, which focuses on food and seafood processing in the Grimsby-Cleethorpes area, does employ over 5,000 people, and they've worked very closely with the Lincolnshire Local Enterprise Partnership on a number of projects. And I'm pleased that both the Business Secretary and the Local Government Secretary have given me and the council leaders the opportunity of putting our case personally to them. But I do hope they will actually take note of what he said, and where there is a successful operation of local enterprise partnerships, to actually support and allow them to continue. And I'm sure the administrative ease that only being member of one could achieve can, I would hope, be overcome. Can I also draw attention to another aspect of the local economy, which was our successful designation earlier this year as a part of the Greater Grimsby Town Deal, which was the first town deal that the government have agreed to. Previously, of course, we're very familiar with city deals, and they have, it has to be said, under both Labour and Conservative governments, the focus on cities has been quite successful, city regions and the like, and there has been a boost to many of our cities as a result. But in recent years, I think many of our provincial towns have fallen behind, and they do need additional support if they are going to revive their local economies. The town deal for Greater Grimsby is and this is crucial, private sector led. But it involves the whole community. We have representatives from the local enterprise partnerships, the universities, English Heritage, or whatever they call themselves now, and there is, as well as the local authorities, both members of Parliament and so on. It's very wide-ranging and a number of large employers in the area. And I do thank the government for that designation and for the support that they've given subsequently. And both the North East Lincolnshire Local Authority are extremely pleased, and they will, of course, be a key part of the town deal. Another important part of our local economy, of course, are the Humber ports, and in particular Immingham in my constituency and neighbouring Grimsby. The Grimsby-Immingham port complex, measured by tonnage, is actually the largest port in the country, and it's absolutely crucial, as members will appreciate, to the local economy. And one hope is that in the post-Brexit world, we perhaps could seriously consider the Freeport status. I've raised this with a number of ministers, and indeed I'm fortunate enough to have been elected the chairman of the all-party group for Freeports, and it is a concept which I think needs serious consideration and could give a real boost to particularly northern coastal economies. A recent report that was published by the Mace consultancy does talk about super ports in the north of England, which could increase the employment opportunities considerably. And that's something that I would sincerely hope is given serious consideration to. We did, in fact, have a debate in this chamber about 2 months ago when the Treasury Minister, my honourable friend from Newark, was reasonably supportive of the project, given the constraints of government policy at the moment. And He did point out that although it is technically possible to create free ports and free zones whilst members of the EU, the port operators and businesses point out to me that basically there are just far too many hoops to get through and hurdles to get over to make it a sensible project. If I could conclude, Mr. Robertson, by mentioning direct rail services. Now, the minister who's going to respond, of course, is a former rail minister and one who took a great interest in this particular project and similar service to his own constituency. He also represents a coastal community and will be aware of the great opportunities that open up if you can get direct services, particularly to London. I was interested that on the Today programme yesterday, John Larkinson, the interim chief executive of the Office of Rail and Road, did hint that he was rather enthusiastic about the increasing open access operators onto the network. That would be possible as the Minister will know. There were a number of previous applications from an open access operator to operate services up the main line and then from Doncaster through Scunthorpe to Grimsby and Cleethorpes. And the operator concerned withdrew an application that was going to be submitted earlier this year because of the current review that's taking place. I would now hope that the government will enthusiastically support open access operation, including on Boxing Day. And to mention what the member for Keighley mentioned his early day motion, which I have already supported, he'll be pleased to know. And so I would hope the Minister and indeed the Shadow Minister will take on board the need to get to Cleethorpes more easily from London and from York and Blackpool and wherever from all parts of the nation, because of course, as I opened my remarks with, it is the premier resort of the East Coast. So perhaps, Mr. Robertson, if I conclude by wishing you, everyone in the Chamber, everyone in the House, all our constituents who, and I think we should acknowledge all those, as other members have, who play such an important part in our local communities. They run charities, voluntary groups, and so on. And without them, our communities would be much the poorer. So, happy Christmas to one and all, Mr. Chairman.